That was my first moment in real estate when I realized how the next generation was coming.
Recently, like I got to do this really cool sit down with Evan Carmichael, who in the YouTube world is like the god. Can I organically make content that will help me find this person? Or do I have to pay for this to get these people in front of me? Like I don't have a ton of subscribers, but like we sold 31 properties last year from YouTube. Like something's working. And
All
he's
right, perfect. You guys know each other, right?
oh
No.
yes. Oh yes.
Yeah, you've met. Taylor, do you want to introduce Tom or do we want to make him do it himself?
Hell yeah, I do.
All right.
So I remember one of the first times that I saw Tom. I was in Toronto for Richard Robbins' event, and we were doing this. What the heck is that weird type of basketball in the bumper carts?
Oh yeah, I don't know the actual
Whirly
name
ball?
anymore.
Is it whirly ball?
Yes,
Might have
in
been.
the little in the little carts with the scoop that you scoop up the ball. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I was on the Masters Advisory Council for RRI, and so these events are normally like qualified events. So you see some like heavy earners, and Tom comes around the corner, and I said something incredibly offensive. I was like, "Hey man, I'm Taylor. Are you on Nathan Dart's team?" And Tom's just like, "No." And then he goes on, right? And that was my first moment in real estate when I realized how the next generation was coming. Like it was just there right now. Is somebody that was younger than I am, that was coming up the same way, that was basically breaking into some of these qualified only groups. And it was Tom Storey. And since then, we just became like fast friends. Like during COVID, we actually had a weekly where we just started chatting. Actually, kind of how this formed, eh, Andrew?
Yeah, pretty much.
And it was amazing because watching Tom execute his plan was really neat. So looking at your multiple streams of income and how you looked at like the audience that you were creating was not just for real estate, but it was real estate. And then turning back and saying, how do I create products and services for these people? So now Tom Storey is an incredible agent, top producing agent in downtown Toronto. Also, one of the agents that's most often featured on television, like the news, as well as an incredible YouTube following. Tom, is there anything that you don't do?
Well, all I'd say is that it would not be offensive to work on Nathan Dart's team. That would be a huge honor. And I actually had dinner with Nate 2 nights ago. He was in Toronto, so I just saw him. But yeah, I actually remember that very well. You're like, who do you work for? I'm like, I work for myself.
So, Taylor, was that the first time you had the like I feel old in the industry now moment?
Totally. Well, it was just the first time that I saw, because a lot of times when you're on your way up, the eyes are on you, you know? Like when I first got into that group, I was the 13th person in to 12 people. And I remember walking in to meet the rest of the Mac group and being like, I'm the only person that's not a millionaire here. Right? But the truth is, you become the average of the company that you keep. And whether it's Nathan or some of our other friends, I feel like an alumnus of that group. Like we were brothers in business. We exchanged business plans. We felt vulnerable. We talked through a lot of those things. And, those ties run deep. It's a cool network.
It's the relationship side of things. Like even for our weekly podcast that I run with Steve, I'm only friends with Steve because we were put in a group together. It was like, probably not many people would be friends with Steve if they weren't forced to talk to him, right? So
He's a tough first impression.
Yeah, that's how it started. And then recently, like I got to do this really cool sit down with Evan Carmichael, who in the YouTube world is like the god. And it's only because someone else we both know very well sat beside him on a plane. It was like, you should talk to Tom. So like everything comes back to like, what are your relationships like, your network, your business, and whether you pay to be in that room or you just get lucky one day. It's so important.
I totally agree.
I'm curious for you, like, because I know I get a lot of people asking me this question. Like, I know how I got into the media before I owned REM, and now I guess I am kind of the media. But you're in a higher tier when you do your stuff. How did you get into that? Because like I was in no local newspaper, super simple. I just put up my hand and asked and said, I want to be in the newspaper. Here's my idea. How'd that go for you to be on? Like, and for those who don't know, like maybe which channels you normally appear on.
Yeah, I actually did CBC Today just before this, but mostly CTV news. I'll do that live a lot. like go on FaceTime. I used to go in person, but you know,
Yeah.
pandemic changed everything. So CTV, CP24, which is the same network. I've done global a lot of times. So like those, like the big Canadian ones. And I guess it was like two things happening at once. So from 2015, we were making video content where I kind of got comfortable, you know, speaking to a camera or just having an opinion about the market. It was going okay. And at that time, Roy LePage, who I work for, had an in-house PR company. They've changed several times over the years, and they started noticing, oh, who's this young guy talking about things? And then I had an opportunity come up once where I got to do, it started with newspaper quotes. So I would just take calls, talk about the market, and get quoted. And when you've done the media enough, and Andrew, you know this better than everybody, it's like the worse the market gets, the more they want to talk to you,
Spells.
because the headlines are way
Yeah.
better, right?
Yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, let me ask my friend Andrew, the media.
Yeah, that's me. Super.
Yeah.
me.
So, I mean, long story short, that happened. I got seen as an option to do it only because I showed myself as being an option,
Yeah.
because I was making the videos. And then what happens with the media is once they can trust you and CTV knows like, hey, if we're stuck in a spot here and we can have Tom come talk about this, he's going to come on, he can talk for 5 minutes. He's not going to screw up. You know, he'll deliver some insight. We trust him. And once you get to that level, like, you know, I have to turn down these days almost half of the requests that I get because they're always like, in 2 hours, can you come do this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have a listing appointment. Like I can't. But once you get on the Rolodex, you know, and they trust you, you're set. They all, and then once you do it for one station, like, you know, I did this big Toronto Star thing about the condo market, and then the Globe emailed me the next day, the Globe and Mail. And then CBC saw that, and then they reached out to me. So they're all just kind of looking at what each other are doing.
It's like the podcast. Like you get on like one podcast in a circle. Like this happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
This happens a lot to me in the States because I don't do a lot in the States, but once in a while I'll get referred by someone Canadian, and then I'll end up on like a very specific circuit of like, I know if I book this one, I'll
Yeah.
probably be on these 5 in the next few months, or like
Totally.
I'll end up like I'll be in Florida doing like 8 events over a 1-year period and then never again. But then I'll get book one in California, which will lead to 8 more in California now for the next year. And it's like odd jumping around like that.
It's weird because sometimes you end up being notable in one circuit and unknown in another. And sometimes you end up getting like uncommon notability in one circuit. Like with me, I think that the most that I've ever done as far as content has been related to Follow Up Boss, like with any single other company. And it's kind of neat that way because each of these little places are networks. Like your coaching can be a network of agents and people that are helping you. And a lot of these other companies have now realized that the network is actually a very valuable asset. And they're kind of running into it because you want to talk to the people that have the same tools as you. But when it comes to talking to the people, that's always something that I find that you do so well. Like they say that great creators in tech, they really understand their target market, their problems, they talk to them. Now, the majority of agents talk about crap. They talk about like they literally read the market statistics, like they don't even talk about what they mean or what they're doing or so on. But you tend to keep your content between the lines of like where the understanding of the average stops and where like real experts are. How do you do that? What's the thought process?
That's actually the thing I noticed the most. Like there's some people that have been at it for a long time on trying to make YouTube videos, and the videos are good, the production's good, the information's good, but it's so realtory. Like it's just so like, oh, this is boring and they're just saying this because of this. And the moment I just started just saying what I actually thought and not wearing a suit jacket in my videos, and got lots of videos that I'm wearing a backwards baseball cap because that's how I was dressed that day. And then it started doing really, really well. And even like for the weekly podcast that we do, I know my audience is buyers and sellers, where I know your audience for this is mostly industry, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to start a podcast that was industry. I know people in the industry listen, but I just wanted to talk to consumers. And Taylor, you've been on the show, like, we tell people before we start recording, like, hey, don't be realtor-y today. Let's just talk about what's going on. Like, these are answers for buyers and sellers. So once
I'm
I made
barely
that
a realtor.
switch, yeah, it's funny, eh? We all say, like, don't hire a part-time realtor. Some of the most successful realtors I know are technically part-time these days.
It's funny how that works, and that's also been like a big part of your story. So while you've been running through developing on the media side, you also run a team.
Yep.
I got to bomb your team meeting in December with my team, and that was super awesome to also see that you carry that same culture through your teammates. Teammates are very real on what they're doing, what they're working on. That culture seems to be directly crafted by you.
Kind of, I'm not going to take credit for that though, because the building out of the team was so organic that it's not like I wrote down a plan one day and said, this is what I'm going to build. Everybody on the team came to me and asked to join the team, and every agent we've ever hired has been brand new to the industry. So there was never like a formula. Like, I don't recruit, but what's kind of neat is like the content we are making, that my mind was like, I'm making this for my current database or to bring in new clients, was actually just being watched by people getting into the real estate industry, and then they would reach out to me. And then realtor referrals, which is like, I don't know, probably third on our business generation. Actually, my assistant just told me, and just in 2024, we've done 15 million in volume from inbound realtor referrals. And I'm like, whoa, I had no idea.
Which
And it's,
network has generated? Because like I know you're kind of bounced between a few different realtor
yeah,
groups. Which one do you find kind of generally would bring you the most referrals?
probably still the Richard Robbins organization.
Yeah.
Closely followed by the Roy LePage Chairman's Group. That is just on a keeping someone at a company thing. I think the best thing Roy LePage did, and they'll
I'd
admit
agree
that.
with that. Yeah.
I'm sure you probably know the same things I know.
Yeah.
Be very hard to leave that group once you're in that group consistently.
I know a few people who've like, oh, if it wasn't for that, I would have left already.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just what holds them there.
Yeah. So those two, and then, but we've kind of created a new one, which is just like the podcast and then the Instagram account. So many times I'll just get a message from someone saying like, hey, I've seen your stuff. I got a client coming to Toronto. I hear you're the guy for this. Can you help them? And that, so of those are kind of the three places that they would come from. And something we did, like, to be strategic about it this year, is I just, on our Instagram stories, I just put a story and said, if you're a realtor that works outside Toronto and you want to be on our list for 2024, click here and fill out this form. And it was just, it wasn't even a type form. It was like a bomb form that when they filled it out, auto put them into my list.
Yeah.
Like 400 people filled it out from all across North America. And now it's an internal document on my team where it's like, hey, you're going to have your main people in different markets, but it's like somebody's asking for somebody here. We go in, command F, search, and see like, hey, how many people are in our document that work in those different areas. It's actually been really useful too, where like I'm not getting the referral, but another agent I know, it's like, do you know someone here?
Yeah.
And if it's not an obvious thing, so that's actually helped as well.
Yeah, being the hub is such like a good way. Like even if you're not directly benefiting from it, like that, being the hub that people come to for stuff is always hugely beneficial for business.
Yeah, it's the realtor referral stuff, I think, is maybe a missed opportunity for a lot of people. Like, what's the cost? You guys would know better than me on this. What's the cost typically to get new business? Like, Andrew, in your world, to make $1, what do you have to spend to get that dollar?
It's skewed now because I have to include what I spend on REM.
Sure. Well, but not even in your world, but like in the world of the agents
being a realtor.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one where we look at is, even though we work with almost exclusively top producers, the numbers on that are way across the board. Like we have some who are $500 per new client,
Okay.
and that can go up to, I think the top one we saw that tracked it, because a lot don't track, was 3,500.
And that's client signed and sold,
Yeah,
or just
like that's a
okay, gotcha.
firm deal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
So that's definitely just kind of proof that it'd have to be worth it. You
yeah.
know, it's
So
gonna
the
spend
3,500 one, they
$3,500.
were like, I think it was 40,000 commission. Like it's worth it,
Right.
right? Like it's the old marketing thing of like whoever can spend the most to get a client wins.
That's
Yeah.
what I try to tell new people of the industry. I was
Yeah.
like, you guys keep thinking that when you get paid, that's your money. But I want you to know that what if your partner was only using half that money to consume and they were using the rest to fight you?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
and like you have to be, when you spend that high amount, you need to know every number, right? Like we actually had a meeting with a client yesterday where like they knew every single source, how many, like down to an exact percentage point, how many leads would pick up a phone after X
Right.
number of attempts, how many of those would lead to a meeting, and they have it broken down by every source, each ISA person that called from the team, like what were their rates on each one. And they have it down to like, if a new lead source in 2 weeks doesn't have this level of a connection rate, we kill it right away, because we know
Interesting.
that connection rate's not going to go up for them.
But even just to build it to that level and to have that level of skill
Yeah.
that it costs you X amount to get a new client, that could take,
Yeah.
I mean, most people never even get there, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where you got to be tracking.
Yeah.
And that's also where you have to troubleshoot, because like sometimes the challenge is capacity. So you might throttle forward your marketing, but if it's not getting traction through conversion, then all that money is burned, right?
Yeah.
That was something I had to solve in my business as well, because my teammates get busy, and then who has attention to give unless we make it like a dedicated element. So making a dedicated what we call momentum focus sessions.
Yeah.
That was something that started to solve that problem, so we can feel more confident in going further and troubleshooting our marketing to make it more effective and dial it up.
You know what I wanted to bring up with you guys, because I've been thinking a lot about this. It's like there's opportunities in every market for business owners, right? But if we're talking specifically about real estate agents, I know if I had just relied on the referrals our business gets from our database and then our strategic alliances, so mortgage brokers, lawyers, other real estate agent, I don't control what that opportunity is. You want the opportunity, you'll service the opportunity. But if I just relied on that, I know what would have happened is I would have just listed even more condos than I already have listed right now, which are taking a long time to sell. So I think like the biggest thing right now, and this is why I love like what both of you do with the online side of things, on the maybe more on the paid side, and then what we've tried to craft on the organic side online with attention, is like now when I'm making new YouTube videos, like I'll give you a few examples. I think in my market in Toronto, if you're a business owner and you actually, because the days of getting the listing signed, getting it on the market means you've made money are over. It doesn't guarantee anything. It just guarantees if you don't sell it, you lose money, right? So how do you maintain your business, help people that need help at that moment in time? And it's like, well, look at opportunities. So I'll give you a few examples. We've helped 3 people buy condos around U of T recently because their kids are going to do higher level education at U of T. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. That naturally happened. I should be making content specifically on the best 10 condos to buy for your kid. Like that video will get very few views on my YouTube compared to the market stuff.
That's high intent.
Or if I can then take that to the paid world and what you do, it's like, can you help me create a lead magnet specifically for that? Because I know those people have equity in their house. They're buying for their kids. They're not as impacted by interest rates. Or, okay, I could list condos all day long, but if we're not selling any condos to our buyers, we're not guaranteed to make any income. So we're going to make video. Like I have 2 videos I'm going to record tomorrow. One's going to be 5 reasons why you shouldn't buy a Toronto condo this year. The other one's going to be 5 reasons why you should. I'm going to have them drop at the exact same time and then link back to each other just to create that content. So I think like agents right now, depending, because I know our markets are so different. Like Taylor, your market's still humming, even though interest rates are high, where you guys couldn't go up in price when interest rates are at 1.5%. Uh, but and then Toronto's like, yeah, freehold selling, but condos are sitting there. Like, you gotta understand your opportunities and then go, okay, can I organically make content that will help me find this person? Or do I have to pay for this to get these people in front of me?
Okay, I want to unpack this a little bit because there was so much good stuff in there. Really, when I zoom out overall, anytime my market is shifting, immediately what I try to do is identify who can win.
Mm-hmm.
So I come from one of the most challenged markets over the last decade. We saw property go down not once, not twice. I'm talking like 6, 7 years in a row. We went past the statistical probability of real estate continuing to go down. And that's because the place I live is kind of a one-trick pony. Like, when oil is good, it's crazy here. But when it's not, it's not. And that was the factor when, I was 2, 3 years into my career and we saw oil just really cruise down in 2015. And what I looked at was, okay, in a down market, who can win? And I saw upgraders, people that are buying more than they sell. In fact, anybody that would identify as a buyer that way, as having an advantage. The other thing is, I noticed that government workers were the most resistant to the downward trend in my economy. So immediately we started to talk to nurses at hospitals, other government workers, teachers. That became our target market. And we also were looking specifically for families that were upgrading to bring a message. And the message was, we'll take this little beating with you on the house you sell. And then we'll take you up market and lay a ground pounding up there. And that delivering that message over and over, but starting with who can win and how can I help them, was really the key.
Taylor, I remember talking to you years ago, and where I was talking about like building a listing focused business. And you're like, I don't want listing referrals from other realtors. They don't sell and I have to pay 25. Give me buyers.
I was in a
Right?
buyer's market.
That's
win,
what
right?
I'm saying though, but we are completely opposite ends of things. And now it's flipped in another weird way.
Oh,
But it's
yeah,
like,
because your market's being hindered by high interest rates and my market's being fueled by it.
yeah, because people from my market are coming and bidding up your market.
We just saw a couple referrals from Ontario yesterday. An agent calling in, saying these people need to get going. We've got their places selling, and they're selling freehold, so they will sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's
So that's
happened right next
interesting.
door. Like right out that window, like, the house, every other house is sitting. That one sold in like 6 days. Like,
Mhm.
those
And
the right ones are selling.
there's weird examples too. Like, another thing I noticed by mistake is we listed 3 condos this year that were all over 1,500 square feet, which is like very large for a Toronto downtown condo.
Yeah, that's huge.
And they were all in buildings probably 25, 30 years old. And these were listings that you used to be scared of, even in good markets. High maintenance fees, outdated. These are going to take a bit of time. Collectively, I got 8 offers on those properties. And I was like, what is going on? And then you realize pretty quick, okay, let's figure the trail here. Well, the people offering on all of these were downsizers that sold their 3,000 square foot house to go to a 1,500 square foot condo, and they're not impacted by mortgage rates.
Yeah,
They have cash.
Totally.
So I should do
by
marketing for
comparison-
those now, right? It's just like, it's very clear.
Yeah, because like downsizers, that's a good market for them. Also, look at it from a time perspective. So take a look at people that participated in the middle of the boom. They have not lost everything that they've gained. So if those people wanted to property ladder up, they can go from leasehold to freehold. They have the equity to kind of make that jump. It just can't be the people that were at the tail end of the rise. Those are the people that have often already consumed their down payment with the downturn.
Right. Well, I'd be interested for you guys to let me know what you think about this. So Taylor, like, our market right now, it is much cheaper to rent than to buy the same property, and not just much, like a lot. Even if you have a 20% down payment, especially for the first time home buyers, like, should I buy that condo for $550,000, or should I, which after everything is going to be 3,500 plus in costs, or should I just rent it for 2,400?
Okay, so my market did that. All right. So what it was is right now we know my market's going up because rents are up 20% from last year.
Yeah.
And what that
Wow.
does is it displaces those renters that were hunkered down because now they're like, man, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent. So I'm going to go. And that's kind of what makes your property ladder start to look like an escalator. However, when the rents go down like that, that is an indicator that the property values are going to follow. And when people can rent for cheaper than they can buy, what's the incentive to buy? Do you really like doing maintenance? There's much less. So they will rent, and it'll probably be a little bit of a precursor there.
Yeah.
But that happened for a long time where I was. So landlords were lowering rents. We're hearing about that in Toronto. That's not happening here. But landlords were lowering rents, and then these tenants ended up staying for very long periods of time.
Yep.
And that actually created the vacancy challenges that ended up starting to shift the market upward again. So it will be a little bit cyclical, but that means that maybe those are not the best opportunities in your market for those people to buy.
Have you seen much? I know I've seen it in pockets, but I haven't seen it as like a hugely discussed massive trend of people who will just stay renting there and then they'll buy a cottage or another property like that. Like,
Or
we've
buy in
seen a lot of that.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, we've helped a lot of people do that. The only thing that they need to know when they go through that process is like, if you're buying and not moving into it, you don't get your first time home buyer credit.
Yeah.
So just to be aware of that. And obviously in those cases, you have to put 20% down because it's an investment property, right? So there's like a few other things to it. But yeah, like if you're locked in, like if you're in a position that you're in a rent controlled situation that's way below market, and you've come to the conclusion that you can't afford to buy what you want in that area, I think it's a pretty good idea, right?
not
And you can
bad.
go an hour outside the city, right? Or you can go to Edmonton.
I mean, not
Right?
great for a
Well, hey,
cottage.
I looked
No.
at a 1,250 square foot apartment style condo on the 16th floor in Edmonton that had river views yesterday,
Yeah.
right? Downtown Toronto, 1,250 square foot place on a good floor.
A million plus.
Okay. Here you can definitely get that at half price. I think this one was 450,000. It's incredible to see the difference. I remember coming to see you in December and being so surprised at the difference. And you guys were already being affected by interest rates, but it wasn't really what we saw this year.
With 20% down, what's cash flow like on one like that for you?
20% down, cash flow is now moving positive, and it wasn't for a long, long time.
Yeah, that 20% down hasn't been cash flow positive in a long time in the GTA.
We're a 40% down market to cash flow or to break even.
Yeah.
So Tom, maybe you could give me some advice from like your special skills, right?
Sure.
It's like my market is really starting to resemble the market that you crafted a lot of your game plan in, right? There's a lot of attention on hot markets, especially from other markets.
Yep.
If I was to swim out to that the same way that you did, where would I go? Like, what would I talk about? What type of videos would I make?
Oh, if it was a low inventory market, not like what we've had for the
Well,
last
maybe
10
you could
years.
give me an example for my market, but you can talk in general about how you package these things.
Yeah. So what I would do if I was starting from scratch and I was in a market that was very hot, the first video that I would make that wouldn't actually get a ton of traction, but evergreen style would continue to build week after week after week, would be a 1 hour and 1 second video. So you get right over that hour mark. That is everything you need to know about selling your Edmonton home in 1 hour. Like that would literally be the title. Those titles seem to be working really well. Like everything I know about business advice in 2 hours and 36 minutes. Like those are trending really well on YouTube. And it's a super long in-depth. Think about like you do your seller presentation. You're just talking to your camera, doing the seller presentation to anybody and walking them through everything they need to know. I've done a video like this where I literally say, here's the different commission models. You can do mere postings where you just, it goes up and you represent yourself. Then there's discount agents. Then there's full service agents. And here's what it typically costs. And here's what you can choose. So it's just like absolutely everything. My flip version of that was like I did a 45-minute version on everything you need to know about buying a Toronto condo.
I remember that one.
I still, I'm not even like, without exaggerating, we've probably sold over 20 properties from that one video. It's, and the comments on that video are like, thank you so much. This is so helpful. You know, if you look at the comments on other YouTube videos, but other topics, they're not that.
Yeah, normally social's not a friendly place to real estate content.
No, but those videos
can be.
that you're not just clickbaiting them with some news story, and you're like walking them through, like, here's everything you'd ever need to know. What I like on YouTube is you can always see like the last 48 hours, which of your videos are doing views. And I'm still getting a video from, I think it was January 2021, that it was called like 5 things Canadian first-time home buyers need to know, or like something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's still getting like 60 views consistently every 48 hours. Like, it's still building after 3 years. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, the next video, like mega long form video I need to make is that, but make that an hour. Like, you're buying a property in Canada. I work in Toronto. I'm going to walk you through everything you could ever need to know, regardless of market. Also, we have great referral partners all across this country. So even if you're not buying in Toronto, let us know down below, book an appointment. We'll connect you with someone that we trust. So not only are you then getting the your market stuff, but then you can shoot out a lot of 25 referrals.
Did I ever tell you guys what I did when I was selling on Twitter for that? I set up, this was back when TweetDeck existed, if you guys remember that. I set up a custom column for looking for a real estate agent and looking for a realtor. And anyone who tweeted that, I'd reply and be like, don't worry, I can connect you with someone in your area. And then I would Google someone in that. And for every 50 messages you'd send out like that, because people tweet that at the time more than I expected, and just start buying. I was sending stuff to like San Antonio, Florida, all over the place.
That's
great.
a neat strategy.
Yeah.
The way you think about these things is often like not like many other people. You make some of these things so simple and they broadcast so far. I have to say that's one of the things that makes me excited that you now have a media company, because that like deep understanding of broadcast, that's exactly what Tom's talking about as well. Is like, how do you reach the people through the machine? How do you look at this like an audience instead of an algorithm? Let's talk a little bit about where your market is right now, because a lot of people are afraid of a scary market. They think that the negative news is driving the negative market.
Yep.
I always look at it like the negative news is basically the other way around. They say what they know we want to hear. So the market is feeding on fear right now, and that's just the state of the market. That's how you're approaching it. So what are people telling you, maybe when they're thinking about selling, what are people telling you their biggest problems are?
So the biggest thing here right now is if you're trying to sell a property that's tenanted, it's not impossible, but it's pretty close. So we have conversation with them and say, okay, well, you know, where are they in the lease? Are they on month to month at this point? Can you call them and have a conversation and tell them, hey, I am going to be selling the property. You know, we want to give you as much notice as possible. When we sell it, if the new buyer moves in, we're going to give you an N12 and you're going to get 1 month's rent compensation and 60 days notice. But, you know, we can do it that way, or, you know, I can just offer you 2 months rent right now to sign an N11. It's mutually agreed upon. Here's how landlord tenant board works. Like, give them all the information, because your chances of selling literally double by having a property that is vacant or owner occupied. Nope. I can tell you, our active buyers, when we set up searches for them now, we don't even send them tenanted properties.
I bet you don't, because it looks like tenants come with a balaclava where you come from.
Yeah, it's not as bad as...
You got way better rules in Alberta for that.
It's not... BC's
I'm
craziest.
Selling a property right now for an agent in another market, and I can tell you that they're like, what? I'm like talking them through their tenant options, and then talking to the tenant. Tenant is super reasonable.
Yeah.
And they're like, I cannot believe it's like this. And I'm like, can you believe that they made less regulation and people got more reasonable? They're charging you to think otherwise. This is why more of our taxes every year as Canadians are going to government than they are going to our own necessities. It's a mess.
And this was never even a conversation we ever used to have. And I think the only reason I'm getting more of these now is because you think of like, who are the people selling? Well, it's the investors that used to be breaking even or making a few $100. Their mortgage just renewed, their rent just went down, and they're like, now I'm losing $1,000. Can I just sell it? That's why we have so much condo inventory. That's why the market's saturated. And I actually think the interest rates coming down from Bank of Canada, although the fixed rate's still so much lower, that's just a news headline thing that will maybe help people feel good down the road. It's going to help our condo market, not because it's going to help more demand show up by buyers being able to qualify. It's going to relieve the pain on some of the people that are trying to sell, that are losing $1,000 a month. They're like, okay, well, it's only 500 now. I'll just take it off the market and I'm not going to sell at that low price. So I think it might actually just remove inventory.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope they equalize between those interest rates and what you guys can get for rents. Now, to draw back to this being like one of those major problems, tenanted properties, that may not be a market that you would actually want to go after, right?
No. We've
So
actually had
what about
internal
another-
discussions about charging more for those type of listings because it's 10 times the amount of work.
Okay, so now what if we went to a more desirable target and chose a different problem? What would be another problem that maybe sellers are talking to you about right now?
Oh, well, everybody wants to buy before they sell because they want to be in control of what they're buying next. But if you want to play worst case scenario, it's a lot scarier to buy first and not sell in time than it is to sell first and at least know what you've got and you can rent short term. But everybody still wants to buy first. Every single person we talk to, we try to talk them out of it.
So now we've got something here. So this is something that you know is part of the conversations of everybody who's considering come to the market, and so on. So that would be like a moment in time that you would probably want to capture. So would this be a great video to make about buying before selling or selling before buying, and explaining that, you know, I guess that there is less certainty on your sale right now than there is that you will find the house you want?
Yeah, because it's flipped on its head. It used to be like always buy first. I'm guaranteed I will sell your property. Like,
Yes.
go get what you want because you don't want to sell first, then the market keeps going up and you get left behind. So
And
it's
now
just
it's the opposite.
completely opposite advice. Where, you know, you can get a bridge loan, but you need to be sold firm, not just on the market, firm. And
That
if you
happened
can't,
really
Go on, yes,
recently to someone I know really well. Like, it was just when the market went down, like, you know, when the rates went up. It was,
Oh,
they
that's
had
the
a
harshest
house in
point.
the couple $1 million range that, like, every house in the neighborhood up until then was selling in a week.
yeah,
They bought the house they wanted, went to put their house up expecting 7 days, and the rate went up and everything died. It took 4 months. Like, they had closed on the other property and had to get a couple $1 million bridge loan just to get through those. Like,
And
it
if you-
was wild.
and if you can't get a bridge loan, then you got to do private money, and that's no
Yeah.
fun. And it's such a like we
Expensive.
had one situation like that last year, and it was the most stressful 2 weeks of my entire career.
No.
So we try to talk people out of it. But yeah, that's a video idea right there.
So now you take this video, you sit down, you like, first off, you probably plan it out and say, okay, this would be the timeline that the story would make sense the best, because you want to program it for that audience. That's right.
Yeah, basically the formula on the videos these days is like statement, back up the statement, raise the stakes. So, you know, so here's what the statement would be. You should always buy, or you should always sell before you buy your next property. Right? So now they're like, okay, interesting. I'm like, I've been doing this for 10 years and that wasn't always the advice, but in today's market, it's really important to understand what I'm about to tell you in this video. And they're like, oh. And then if you decide not to take my advice in this video, there's a good chance you could be owning 2 properties at the same time, paying really high interest rates on another loan you don't want, and it could look really difficult. So now you're like, oh crap. Okay, what's he about to say? So I would just kind of set it like that. And then I would go into my 3 points on why I believe this to be this. And then let the comment section basically take over.
Okay, now I want to go from here to Andrew. I know that we are going to have some questions and such here, but Andrew, so Tom has made this desirable piece of content.
Yep.
What do you want to think about when you're distributing this and also when you're trying to make capture from it?
So this does depend on the person. So like in Tom's case, I know, I mean, I assume he has a very effective mailing list.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't send as much as everyone should because everyone doesn't. But you're going to email it out to your database, and you want, because what you want right away is the people that like you the most to get there, because that early engagement boost is going to distribute it to more people. So you want to make sure they're there. So emailing that content out to them, encouraging them to do it is huge. You want to do that. And then again, depending on your reach, like if you're early in this and you can afford it, put money behind it. Now with YouTube, you got to be a little more careful because the ad spend, because like obviously how much of the video they watch impacts distribution, but they count the ad spend, the people who watch it through ads, towards that. So if you're putting money behind a YouTube, like I know a guy who runs I Heart Basketball, like if you know that channel, like a couple million followers, he actually creates a secondary channel to run the ads through so that it doesn't impact his main channel. So you got to get into certain little things like that. Then obviously there's stuff like cutting it up in all the different ways. Like, but this, how you cut it up depends on which other platforms you're active on. Right. So like if you are Instagram, you're going to cut it into reels, you're going to cut some pieces into stories as previews, do some graphics into posts. But like if you're doing an hour, what, let's say an hour long YouTube video, if you don't come out of that with at least 50 other pieces, you haven't cut it up enough yet. And that could be like posts, reels, stories, blogs, all that fun stuff. But like I would aim probably for at least 50 legit assets to come out of that.
And then you just keep bringing. So now, when you're making those additional assets, are those assets linking back?
Not every time. Like a lot of times, like the actual video itself might not. Then the caption links back to it. But like again, it can depend how you film that hour long, right? Like if it's clearly they've cut out something out of a longer one, people will naturally ask. So sometimes I don't tell them where it is because I want them to message me to ask about it so that I can start a conversation with them. So
okay, so this is where you're
withhold.
Radically different because you're really looking at this from a lead perspective.
So when most people look at this, right, like when content, they're taking advice from content creators whose business is, I need more views, I need more this. In real estate, you're more looking at, I need more conversations with people. That's a very different outcome you're trying to get. So it's the same idea essentially behind like all the people who take the price out of the ad of a house and they're like, well, now they have to reach out to me to get the price. I'm not a big fan of that method, but I need to do something to get them to message me is very different. Whereas if I'm like an influencer with millions of followers, I need more views, I don't want DMs necessarily because I can't service them. I don't necessarily sell to them that way. And it's a drag on the system. So I'm discouraging that. In this business, you need as many messages and phone calls as you can generate. So if you can do things like that, that encourage you, like, where can I find this? Same reason, like you're sending out a listing. Sometimes like hey, this house just sold that you had inquired about. Do you want to know what it sold for? Is better than, hey, this house sold, here's a sold price. Because I want them to say, yes, I want to know.
So here's the breakdown of that conversion piece. So you're basically setting it up so you get more DMs and followers. When you get followers, you DM them right away and you start those conversations. You want to convert those conversations to database entries, to your mailing list, and to other assets, because some of these will be marketing qualified leads and other them will be ready right now.
Yeah, and that's like that initial message we always send. It's not like a pressure tactic style messages. Like it's just like, hey, thanks for following. Are you here for the content or are you in the market to move? Right? Like super simple. Like for my own business, I'm like, hey, thanks for following. Are you just here to learn from the content or are you looking for help to grow your business? If they say help to grow your business, I'll ask them a few qualifying questions and then go on. They say I'm here for the content. It's just like, great, what type of content do you want to see? Or like, what challenges do you have in your business? I'm happy to make content around it. And it's just that now helps me inform what other content I want to do. Like if I was Tom and they reached out about something, I'd be like, hey, thanks for following. Are you here just for the content or are you in the market to move? They say content, be like, great. Like what questions do you have about what's going on in the industry? And now you just got ideas of content. Like every webinar I do this. Like I'll send out, when you get a confirmation that you joined my webinar, an email goes out partially so that I always end up in your inbox and not in spam. But that first email is like, great, thanks. And by the way, as a favor, just to help me create the content for this webinar, can you answer this question for me? Just hit reply. So that does two things. One, make sure I'm on the right track with the content for the webinar, and I have adjusted webinars based on those replies. Two, I just create a spreadsheet, and now I have 10 more content ideas for after. So it just keeps informing, and it's like a loop of, okay, this is the content I need to create next.
And could you literally just do that as an Instagram story from the followers you already have?
So you can do that or use the question box.
Right. Because I was thinking on YouTube, I think once you pass 500 subscribers, it opens up the community tab. And we run polls all the
YouTube will
time.
also drive them back to Instagram, right? So it's like, DM me on Instagram for this.
Right.
So, but that can depend on your systems, right? Like if you are really busy and want this area, it might be better for you to manage it over here. Like the more I talk to teams that are doing like 300, 400, 500 deals a year, they narrow the focus to, I only want like one inbound way for people to reach out to me. Like I don't want to have to monitor 10 different social accounts and these. So like some of them, that might be a phone call, right? So it's like every account is designed to drive them to call into the office. Others, it's, I want everything over to Instagram DMs. Others, it's email. But it's like they pick one and they try to just funnel everyone to that one place, and then they perfect that one place.
Yeah, and that's a way better way to do it, because capacity will be the challenge if you're doing the front end right.
Yeah.
And so then you can use these types of things as a filter. So maybe in the beginning you want to run your mailing list and you want to generate that, but then once you're kind of struggling to keep up, you've got too much flow, then by making people go to phone, you're actually going to rule out people that you think will be less likely, because phone is a higher level on the hierarchy of communication effectively. Because if you get in touch with them by email or messenger, what are you trying to close? The phone call. You know, who wants to set appointments definitely in person without a phone call? Not me, right? There's people out there that are creepy.
You'd be surprised though how many people can do that through Instagram now. Just straight. I'm not like, the first time you talk to them with their voice is at the property, and they just do it all through DM. Like
That's great.
was even talking to one agent, his ISA doesn't take phone calls. He answers Instagram DMs. Like
no kidding, eh?
The model. Like he actually now has 2 full-time ISAs that just answer DMs on Instagram. And that's
Incredible.
the model. Yeah, like
from ads.
Nope, his is organic YouTube.
Okay.
Push them over to Instagram, and then the 2 ISAs just answer Instagram DMs.
You know any agents that are effectively using the broadcast channel on Instagram and
I know
actually turning it into business?
Yeah. I know a bunch using it. I haven't talked to anyone that I can say, like, I'm not a fan of it. Like I've tried. If I'm gonna get them in DMs, I want to talk to them. Right. Like I don't, like, if you're Gary Vee, sure, the broadcast channel makes sense. But again, back to like, that is a influencer model. For real estate, I want replies. I want comfort. Like maybe Sirhan, like someone like that. Sure, the broadcast model probably works great. There is some value in the sense of like, maybe I can get that initial group to go like my content.
Yep.
But I don't know. Like I have yet to see. It's like, remember when they launched, what was it called? Like, I forget what they called it, where it's like the back door of your content, where like you click the key and you get people to see like the other side.
Flip side or something?
Flip side, yeah.
Is that gone now?
Probably. It was trash.
I have no idea.
Like I tried it and I was like, hey, maybe I'll try like business in the front, party in the back style content. And it wasn't good. Like engagement was low. Like even though it even sent a notification to people when you posted on the flip side, even with that bonus, it still sucked.
Oh, that's great. Hey, is Greg Knopfler still going to talk to us?
Yeah, let's I'm jumping him up to a panelist. So he'll be here.
Ooh, panelist.
To accept it. You can ask a question.
We're working with a studio audience. Is that what we call them? The live studio audience? The live
Now
virtual.
We are.
Sure. Okay.
There we go.
And we have Craig.
Guys, I got promoted.
There you go.
Welcome.
And we're going to demote you soon after too.
Assistant
Taylor,
to the regional manager.
Tom, good to meet you.
Do you guys know Craig?
Hello.
No.
You guys will like Craig. No. He sucks.
I suck a lot.
Craig runs a great business in Curtis and big farmer. What do you guys like? What transactions roughly? I know you guys are
generally 80 to 120, depending on the year. But yeah.
Great farming. So
And I
you had a
know-
question though.
Well, yeah, and I kind of feel like it's off topic now
That's okay.
because it went very media heavy. But
Yeah.
More, I guess, my problem solving brain. Tom, you were asking earlier. You're like, what do you do when it's so much cheaper to rent than it is to buy? And when the market turned, one of the first things that we did is we analyzed the numbers, and we just basically made a spreadsheet that we equipped our agents with, and it was like, you can ask somebody, how much do you think the market is down, and you can show them the savings that they would have over buying at the peak. And you know, and it's not something where you're trapping people in, because they're the ones who get to pick the number. You're not saying, well, it's gone down 45% and this is what it looks like. But we had it at various price points, and because I think you'll find that the term that we always use is marry the price and date the rate, right? So yeah, it's kind of shitty that right now you've got to pay 6 or 7 points on your money, but when you're saving 15 to 25% on the purchase price, as we are in Toronto or in the GTA, it's still a much better buy.
Oh, for sure. It's just it's gonna hurt for the first maybe for the next 3 years, and then when the rate's at 3.5%, it's gonna look pretty damn good. I just feel like everyone, I think even the people that rent now, they still want to buy. They're like, okay, but it's not going to make sense for 2 years. But as I've kind of learned from doing online content, is those people will never think it's the right time. So regardless of what you tell them, there's always something else that's about to happen, you know?
Okay, have you found it
I agree with
changed
that
people's
statement.
mind with the spreadsheet? Like, have you seen the spreadsheet that you put
Yes.
with your agents that's like actively changed their mind?
100%, because it's difficult to. One of the biggest things that we have in real estate period is just objections, right? Like, we're basically just objection handlers. That's all we do. And if the true objection is, I don't see the value, and you can put the value down in black and white, and you can say, here it is, then that's the objection that you overcome. They're willing to move forward. And it's very rare that I see somebody that I can explain, hey, we're going to put, $99,000 in your pocket because you're going to do this now. And yes, it seems counterintuitive. And yes, it seems like you're going against the stream, but here's the data behind it. It's really rare that people say no.
Right.
On the flip side, when they do say no, they're the same ones coming to you when the market's really hot saying, hey, bring me an off-market deal. And you're like, there's no such thing as an off-market deal right now. Train Monkey puts a sign on the lawn and it's still going for 180,000 over list. So, it's just when you were mentioning that, and that's a struggle that the only thing that I disagreed with that you said was when you said taking a listing right now isn't a guarantee. We don't do a lot of condos, so perhaps that's a different market, but we're also very particular in we're not taking things unless we know how it's going to play out, right?
That sizzles. Of course.
Yeah. So
coming from somewhere that was a buyer's market, protecting your listing inventory is part of the defense strategy, right? What you want is for your competition to get failed listings, and then for you to get them on the second run. Okay, being the second agent is worth marketing for. Marketing to people, with the sentiment that they weren't effective is really key. And I like what you were talking about in saying that we tell people things all the time. We handle their objections, but there's nothing more powerful than showing them. So making that visual. But I also think that objections are the verbalization of fear. And what people are afraid of is that they're making a bad choice and it's a big financial decision. So showing them how it works and reinforcing things. Like, do you think that the market will continue to go down? If so, how long? And they might agree with Tom. They might be like, you know what? The next 2 to 3 years might be rough.
Yeah, there's a great line.
And then you can ask them again and say, well, when do you plan to sell again? And they might be like, well, this is our forever home. Well, you don't define yourself in the market aside from 2 days. The day you buy and the day you sell. Those are defining points in the market, and every other day is just a day that you live there.
One of my favorite, I was at an event for speakers. So it was like all the top speakers that were there. And one of the guys they had speak to the room was a sales trainer. And you said one line that always stuck, which is literally just sales is just the transference of certainty. And you just got to take the certainty you have and what's happening and give it to them. And he's like,
That
it's that
sizzles
simple.
too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got to remember that speaker's name now because I want to look him up. That was my favorite part. I remember what he
It was
said.
me.
Yeah, it was Craig all along.
It was me until you find out who it actually was, and then
Yeah. I do remember you look nothing like him. Slater. Yeah. Good times. All right. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for
Thanks,
coming
guys.
by.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Craig. We're demoting you now. You're going back.
All right. Goodbye.
You never know. It might be better to like he could be like the guest star. Like I once interviewed Jimmy Schubert and he was on, I don't know, 15 episodes of King of Queens.
Oh, I used to I mean, that's one of those shows I used to watch it all the time, and then I just completely forgot about it after it stopped airing.
Well, that's like a rerun cable show that was just on, you know.
Yeah.
So I watch a lot of episodes too. Yeah.
I don't ever remember watching a new episode of it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
It was just in
It
that
was
like
always
5
rerun.
o'clock after school slot. That like Everybody Loves Raymond, which also did not survive into the Netflix world.
So when you're taking a look forward, like Tom, you just recently spent some time sharpening up your content. You were talking to me about the format that you use, you know, to get attention. Do you want to go into that a little bit? Like when you're thinking about making sure that your video gets views, what do you do when you're thinking about how to set it up?
I mean, the simplest way to answer this is like, it doesn't matter how good the video is if the title and thumbnail aren't good too, right? So if you want to hack the system a little bit further and not have to pay for it, if you title your video the same as a current news headline, there's a good chance Google picks that up because Google is YouTube. When you show up just below the news headline, you get a ton of external views.
Newsjacking.
So that has worked very well for us. But those videos don't get me appointments. Those videos are purely channel growth videos. The real wake up call for me was actually, I had that meeting with Evan Carmichael and I felt pretty good going into it, being like, I don't have a ton of subscribers, but like we sold 31 properties last year from YouTube. Like something's working. And he's like, pulls up my channel, starts watching my videos and just absolutely destroys me. And it was so good. He's like, this sucks. I don't care. Why are you saying this? Get to the point. And I'm like, whoa, man. But like people watch. He's like, it was the best thing that could have happened because, and he has a segment called Tell Me Why I Suck. So that's his whole thing, right? He's like, drill into me here. I think I'm good at this. You tell me why I suck at it. And it was so eye-opening because he basically said, listen, the people that already know you and like you, they'll watch this full video because you've already got them. A new person coming to this not knowing you, they're gone after 15 seconds. They're not going to keep going here. Because I would start my videos by saying like, you know, there's a good chance condo prices could go down this year, but giving them good chance, potentially this could happen is a cop-out.
Hedging.
Yeah.
That's
That's
like
like
to make a
disclaimer
bold
language.
statement.
That's
Put that in the
disclaimer
Hemingway
language.
app. Have you ever used the Hemingway app?
No.
Really?
So Hemingway app's this great tool that you put your writing into. So there's more on a written side, but you could put like your opening part of your script and it'll just tear it apart and be like, you're hedging with this, take out this qualifier. And it helps you rewrite your content to like have those. Cause I do that all the time with, well, mostly, or it depends, or, you know, I do that stuff all the time.
You can deal with the buts later in the video. It's got to start hot. And so his whole thing was basically like, let's make you better at the first 30 seconds because that's where you're getting all the drop off on the viewership. And once they watch past that, then getting to 8 minutes is a much easier way of doing it. And so that was the change.
We talk about that with phone calls too. Like we talk about like how you do the first 3 seconds is earning the next 10. Sorry, Andrew.
I would say the way that someone words me with the YouTube video is like, you want to create tension at the beginning.
Yep.
And you try to hold that as long as you can. But you have to have that initial point where you've created tension in the person. So like a strong statement, especially if they disagree with it, puts that tension in them. So you're just like, how can we create that tension and then hold it throughout the video? So that's like where those like gimmicky videos where they're like, you see something happening, but then it never quite happens. That is
but
an
you're waiting
intentional
for
thing.
it.
Yeah, because they know if you hit a certain point, they get paid by the platform. So that stupid, all you're doing by like waiting for that like pin to pop the balloon is I'm going to get paid if I hold that line until a certain point. but there's a lesson there in your other content of you still got to create that tension for people.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it. The people that will know you will watch your stuff regardless, but the new people, if they're brand new, they have no clue who you are, you have to start your videos kind of hot with a bold statement. And then you can deal with the what ifs later, you know?
Like what you said about Evan, like that's one of my favorite things is having people who will tell you when you suck. Like I went to a speaker event, and it's one of the best events I went to. Is a speaker boot camp. And the first day is like refining your pitch a little bit. Day 2 is you do it and they just rip you apart while trying to screw with you. So like, but at the end of your talk, they literally have every other attendee be like, all right, now we're all going to take our time to tell you which parts we didn't like. And that was the day. And then like, actually, do you guys, I know somebody like Taylor, you know, Kelly Scar, and
you introduced me to him.
Yeah. So I remember because I was terrible on video when I started. And I remember one time we were sitting having a beer. He's like, I don't get you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're so charismatic when we're sitting here having a beer talking about this, but you're so fucking dull on camera. I was like, yep, that is a very fair point. And then I started changing it. That's why part of the reason Over a Pint existed, because I was like, well, let's get a beer in me and then we'll be good on camera from then on.
One of the ways that I practiced in order to get rid of my ums, uhs, and buts was to record my voicemail every day. And it would literally be like, hi, you've reached the voicemail of Taylor Hack, and unfortunately, I'm unable to take your call at this time. But I will be returning calls between 11 and noon, and again between 3 and 5 based on today's schedule. So if you wouldn't mind leaving me a message, I'll get back to you as soon as my day permits. And by sharpening that over and over again, it got me into the like zone for turn your camera on and go, right? Yeah. And that was something that helped me. That was just a general exercise.
That was a daily recording that you would do every day for your
first thing I would do every single day. And I would say what day it is, so it would screw me if I didn't do it tomorrow.
Yeah. I have answered a few or called a few people who they do that, and I'm always impressed. I'm like, I would never. I also don't check my voicemail.
It massively improves the amount of people that leave voicemail.
Yeah. So mine is don't leave a voicemail, just send me a text, because I'm like it'll get you a quicker answer. So I have
a dissenting opinion on that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Why don't we think that people know how to use phones?
No, I don't
like. Why don't we assume that if they get to the end of our voicemail that they understand that they could have texted? That's just my question. Yeah. Is that, you know, for me, if I want someone to text when they call, I have those auto texts and I just send them an auto text and it immediately gets them to respond by text. But yeah, just the way I think, I guess. Tom's chuckling.
Taylor, there's someone that both me and you know that I'm not it's just kind of funny, but their voicemail is actually not even them. It's their assistant that is the voicemail that says, thank you for calling. We do not check our messages. Please email us at whatever. Like, just like, don't even bother leaving the voicemail because we're not doing this with you.
Just don't initialize it at that point.
I don't even know how you got to this mailbox, but you've gone the wrong way.
Yeah, don't go any further. Hang up.
So we do have a question here before we go. So Leanne's asking, totally off topic question for Taylor. I was at one of your listings once and saw the notes you put on walls. Don't you just love ... Where did you get those? I thought it was brilliant when I saw them.
Actually, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We get a lot of comments on those, and I really would like more people to steal them. So you can hit me up on Instagram as far as the vendor goes. But what they're talking about, in restaurants, they're called table tents. They sit on the table and they hold the specials, right? And we distribute probably between 12 and 18 of these per listing. And it's based on, so my background is sales previous to real estate. And that's also what I see lacking in real estate, is many people think it's a sales job. There's no salespeople here. It's a very different role. And so presenting property, especially for new or inexperienced agents, is really challenging. Like, they walk around the corner and they're like, so this is the kitchen. And one of the first things that I teach my agents is that there's a value to silence. And if you are going to speak, it needs to be above the value of silence. We can all see that's the kitchen. So why not talk about things like layered lighting, you know, granite countertops, those, like, go a level up from there. But because of that, we put these little displays throughout so that other agents that are not as well trained will talk about the things that are benefits in our listing. Now that's really key because that means they learn about the central air conditioning as they're walking up the steps towards the bedrooms. And they learn about the lot size while they're looking out the back window from the top floor over the lot. There's a few key elements that you can make happen right when you want them to happen. So we call these silent salespeople. And what they are is these little notables that we distribute through our listings.
That's great.
I know a few people have done, like, I know someone else who does it. They write them on Post-it notes, but then frame the Post-it note. And they put those, but like they also, every house is painted a certain color because their goal is, even if you don't see our sign, I want you to know it's our listing. So like how they get the home ready for sale is also part of their branding now. So it's the same smell in every house, same music playing in every house.
I do the smell thing.
Yeah, that's one of those.
Yeah, I learned it from casinos. Most casinos in Vegas spend about $80,000 a year leasing the fragrance that has been custom made and
Taylor just pumps oxygen into his listings.
Well, I love
No, we do it at Christmas time.
Dean Jackson talks about it, right? Like
Christmas potpourris, so that we actually the fragrance of your holiday.
It's smart. I think you gotta go every sense in the house, right? Like Dean Jackson talks about, like if you're a liquor store, if you play Spanish music, Spanish wines sell more. If you switch to Italian music, the Italian wines are going to sell more. So he's like, when you're doing that type of thing, like like Ralph Ciancio, who you guys know, like he has a playlist of slow moving songs. He wants people to walk through the house slower, and all the songs also talk about home in it because he wants you to feel at home.
Ralph was telling me about that. That's based on retail research. If you ever walk into a supermarket and they've turned up the volume and the beats are pumping, that's because they're moving people through faster. It's busy in there.
And like you could take those things, and most people ignore that. Or like there was another one I heard Dean talking about, which I loved. It was a guy who painted restaurants, and then he also wanted to transition to painting dealerships. And so they were working on, how do you pitch a dealership that they need to paint? Because like a restaurant will paint every 6 months because it makes it look cleaner. Dealerships don't have that same frequency. So he's like, how can we get more dealerships signed up to use you as their painter? And the pitch changed to, I have a way to paint your dealership that'll increase sales 10%, because it's like the way he painted it, and like he put paint words on the walls would essentially like subtly encourage people to buy the units. And they took a single dealership, proved the concept, that sales went up after the paint job. And it's like, now instead of saying, hey, I just want to paint your place, it's, hey, here's what I'm going to charge to paint to boost your sales 10%.
That's crazy.
Right? Like it's, so like when you take that thought process and be like, how can I apply that to the house that I'm selling? Right? Like how can I change the house?
Well, eventually we're going to go Joe Rogan style and do like 3 straight hours. But right now we're holding Tom hostage because he books his schedule back to back.
Yeah, I had to change my 3 o'clock already.
If people are looking for you, you've got a couple of courses out there as well, hey?
We're still doing the boot camps. Well, the video course is still up. But yeah, I would just say like what's working for me, if you're going to get into the video stuff, go steal our stuff. Nothing's an original idea. Do it in your own way. There's a different audience. It's all good, but it's a grind, right? And just this last 20 minutes, like talking about marketing gets me so excited. Like there's something about when a calendar comes in from a person I didn't know existed that says, I found you from YouTube and I'd like to buy this. And I've been watching your videos for 6 months. And then I call them and like, Tom, I watch you. Like, I tell you, that dopamine is better than any, like,
oh yeah.
And we sell them a property and then they become a past client and then they come to our events. And it's like, just because, 8 years ago, I recorded myself on a little shitty iPad mini doing a market update. And now it's like every week I'm getting 4 or 5 of those calls and they're turning in, like, Andrew, you'll love this. Our conversion rate to firm from YouTube leads is almost 33%.
I believe it. Like YouTube, as I think I've probably said this even on this show before, is I think YouTube is the most valuable place to get subscribers. It's the hardest one to do, but the best one if you can get it.
I totally agree.
Booking calendar to sale, 1 in 3 turns into a firm transaction.
It's pretty good. And over what timeline is that? Do you track that?
It's probably a 90-day. Like normally it's pretty quick. They're ready to go.
Because if you go to the remaining 2/3 within 2 years, you probably get another half of them.
Probably, if I would look back. Yeah.
Well, that's killer. And I like that talking about marketing gets you jacked. We'll definitely invite you back. If people want to find your podcast, it's the Tom Storey Show.
Yeah.
And
Biggest platform's
also,
YouTube for that too.
Yep. And also they can find you also on Instagram. And Instagram is Story Team?
The Story Team.
Perfect. And that's Story with an E.
Yeah, like Stories of a Building, how it should be spelt. Yep.
There you go. Well, I always love hanging out with you. We'll definitely get together soon, and we'll ask you back as well.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Tom. See you
Okay.
guys.
Take care.
Bye.